Hello, this is Dante, or some of you might know me as Clockwise, and I thought it would be interesting to show you guys a little bit of what it's like to work in FontLab and just talk about this project a little bit. So, a disclaimer here is that this isn't my font, or it's not my script. This script actually belongs to a 13-year-old boy. No, actually, I think he's 12. A 12-year-old boy. He's my student. I'm an English teacher in Moscow, Russia, and I teach various age groups of English. Um, and I have a student who created the script that you can see in the corner. Um, why did he create the script? Now, this is an interesting story. Every single day I come into class, he has some kind of writing on the board. He'll have the Ukrainian alphabet on the board. He'll have the Polish alphabet on the board. He'll have random Arabic words, random Chinese, random Japanese. So he's always got some kind of language written on the board. He clearly has an interest in language. But he's young, and I don't think he really knows kind of what to do with this interest. Well, one day, we had just kind of a relaxing day. Uh, After a test, some of the students wanted to watch a film, and he didn't really want to watch the same film everyone else did. And he protested it quite a bit. And I thought, well, what we should do is we should have them watch the film, and I can have him work on something of his own. And I came to the realization, or to the thought, that, he's always writing scripts on the board. Why not introduce him to Neography? Okay, so I tell him, you will write me a new alphabet. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, come up with a new alphabet. Think of something out of your own head. New letters for a new language. And he thought, wow, that's interesting. Okay. So he sits down, about 5 minutes go by, and he comes back up with something resembling what you see in the corner here. And I look at it and I think, well, honestly, in my head, I think, okay, that's something. I tell him it's cool, but we had a whole film to watch, and he already finished this. I needed him to work on something more. So I told him, okay, well, can you write something for me in this language? And he said, like what? I said, I don't know, anything. What is the language called? Write the name of the language using the script. Um, Come up with some new vocabulary. Come up with anything. So he says, okay. He sits down. Again, like 2 minutes later, he comes back. He's like, okay, I wrote this. And it's 2 words. It's the name of the language and the word for language in a new language that he had just created. Okay, cool. Cool. That's really cool. It was really interesting, actually. Some of the phonology in there was really interesting. And even in his script here, I think a lot of it is quite interesting. He's got some pretty cool clusters, like he's got an rsh cluster. He's got like a weird long vowel, like a long I thing. So he's got some interesting things. He's got an ua cluster here, or an ua diphthong, I guess. Anyways, so I tell him, okay, well, I need you to work on some more stuff. We have more film to watch. And he says, what should I do? Well, what about grammar? You need to make a new grammar for this language. It's not going to be like Russian. It's not going to be like English. What's it going to be like? And he didn't quite understand. So I asked him, okay, well, how do verbs change? Do they change for each person like they do in Russian, like an I form, a you form? Do they not? Maybe they only change for some forms, like in English, how there's a third person singular form that's different from the rest. Maybe it's somewhere in between. Maybe it's no changes. How about a past tense? How does it change in the past? What about adjectives? Are there genders in your language like there are in Russian? If there are, how many? What kinds? Or is it genderless like in English? So I give him some ideas, like what kind of thing can you do to make this language unique and your own? And again, he kind of just looks at me and says, okay, interesting, and he sits down. And this takes up most of the rest of the class, which is good. That's what I was hoping And one of the things I thought was really cool about this is as he's sitting there working on this new language, multiple times throughout the class, he just says, "This is so exciting. This is so exciting." So he clearly found like something he loved, the idea of making something that's his own, that's related to language, something he clearly has an interest in. That appeals to him. And I was really happy to hear this. I think it's really cool to have someone new and someone so young. He's so creative. If you knew him, you'd know on the board, he's always drawing. He loves to draw. I've told him multiple times, you should take an art class. You should just go and express your creative side somehow. Find some kind of outlet. And maybe this will be his new outlet, and that's super cool. So he leaves class. I don't see him for a couple weeks because I see him once a week, and we had conferences that next week, so we didn't hold classes. And I hear from his mom saying he's been working on something. He's been working a lot on something, and I'm not told exactly what this something is, but it becomes pretty clear to me, he's been working on this language, and the fact that he spent a couple weeks working on this, super cool. So he comes back the next week, and he's like, "I forgot my notebook." I'm like, "Okay, what notebook is it important? Do you need it for class?" Said, No, it's got charts in it." Okay, cool. He's created charts. He says it's got like adjective declension charts, things like this. And I said, "Oh, well, that's too bad. Well, is there anything that you can just remember off of the top of your head?" He said, "Yeah." So he started showing me some things, how certain things change. One of the things I thought was really cool, and for a normal language, this is just a normal thing. It's not actually that cool of a thing. But for someone who's never done Neography before, who's brand new to it, it's cool that he included this. And that was exceptions. So he was showing me some spelling rules. He was showing me how certain letters, certain glyphs, specifically, he has a short I and a long I glyph. And he was saying something along the lines of the short I comes before consonants or something like this. Like there was a rule about when the short and the long I can appear and what noises they can appear in front of. And then he told me there's an exception to this rule. One of his okay, the rule was that I forget. Okay, forget that. So one of the exceptions was that his short I can come before a sound that normally can't. Not the short I couldn't normally come before the sound, but rather vowels shouldn't be able to come before these kinds of sounds or something like this. And he said, but the short I breaks this rule. It's an exception. I said, oh, that's really cool. I like exceptions. And then he said, there's an exception to that exception, though, and that's in this one word. And it was his word for king, I think. And so he has an exception to some phonological rules, and then he has an exception to that exception, which I thought was exceptional. I loved it. I told him exceptions are cool, and even cooler than that is exceptions to exceptions. I think it's a very natural thing for a language to have, and I think for a new conlanger, that's a really cool thing to just want to include. I think it shows promise. And I think this whole thing shows promise. I think in his script alone, there's some really creative ideas. For example, if you look at the last character on the second row, you can see kind of a K underneath it, the phoneme. This is a weird character, and right underneath it, the first character on the third row is this flipped. I think those are kind of cool characters. They're really strange. In this, you probably saw me tackle it. I wanted it to be kind of. I didn't know what I was going for. I wanted it to not be a uniform length all the way through. I thought it would be more interesting. But those are interesting characters. Also on the fourth row, the first character, it's an M. That was a weird character. And you'll see I don't tackle that character for a while in this. It scares me. I don't know why. It's just so strange to me, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. That one scared me, as well as the very last letter. you'll see it's a short I, or he uses the Cyrillic ikaratkaya. It's like a weird circle with some lines and a half circle on top and a dot, and the whole thing is just really, really strange. And I just really didn't want to touch that for the longest time. So that one and his M are things that you'll see I still haven't created. And I think I'm about to actually start work on the M right here at this moment in the video. I start off with creating the hook part. I figured I'll take an O, just create the standard O with the thicknesses that I normally do for the rest of this. That's about 80 units if I remember correctly. And just take some rectangles and put them in the shape there. And of course I'm not going to leave it this way, it's just kind of a frame. And I thought it would be cool if, the rectangles pointing towards the left were a bit thicker than the rectangles pointing towards the right, to give it some a bit more interesting of a shape. And then of course here I add some serifs. And that little piece that I just brought down there, the kind of like a little hook, I wasn't sure. I kind of deliberated on a little bit, like whether or not I wanted to keep that or not. In the end, I asked my girlfriend what she thought. She didn't like it, so I said, okay, we'll get rid of it. So this letter here, if I remember correctly, is the short I. And you'll see in his image, this hook that goes in just kind of shoots to the left. And I didn't really like that. Mostly I didn't want to do it. It just seemed kind of like a pain. And I was feeling a little lazy at this moment. But I thought, that could be like his handwriting. This could be a more standardized version. In all, I think that character is just really weird, and it quite reminds me of something along the lines of what's it called? Like abstract art. It's just really strange. This character here is really quite simple. Very easy, very quick. Now I start work on the ligatures here. His clusters. So this is Ua ligature. Very, very simple. Actually, you'll kind of see on the paper I have his short I, or his long I actually, his long I, and another one circled in pencil. I circled those myself so I could remember not to add them in, or remember not to forget to add them in. I did forget to circle the Ua ligature, but luckily I remembered here. And then in the corner there, I'm just kind of adding in the ligature features. You'll see there's kind of a script there. It's a really, really simple script. It's not difficult to learn. If you are thinking about using FontLab, and that script for the ligatures and for the open type features is intimidating, don't let it be intimidating. It's actually really quite simple. I don't even really know how to use it. I just kind of find places where it's been used and kind of approximate it myself. It tends to work. This glyph here, actually, it's very similar to a Russian D, and I kind of saved it for last, or at least one of the last, because it itself scared me. I wasn't really sure how to create a Russian D that felt kind of faithful to the original Russian D, but also a little bit of my own. I was a little scared of it. I think it turned out all right. Honestly, I'm not a big fan of it, but to be quite frank, I'm not a big fan of a lot of this. And so that's about everything. You'll see on the screen I've got an image of all of the finished letters. I think all of them at least. I might be missing one, but let me know what you thought. What do you think about this? What do you think about having a new conlanger in the community? And what do you think about this script? It's okay if you don't like it. It's made by a 10-year-old. It's fine. And hopefully I'll see you guys later.